What's up, everybody? Laura Pintaro here, and welcome back to the don't say it, Laura. Don't say it. Don't say the vlog. Welcome back to my you-know-what. Today in this video, I want to talk to you guys about how you can achieve simple yet very effective color correction in Premiere Pro. Let's go. And before we get started, please remember to subscribe, like, comment, and ring that little bell. It really helps me out, guys, and I know you like to help me out. And before we delve into this tutorial, guys, please remember that this is a tutorial for color correction, not color grading. Those are two very different things, and it's really important to know the difference, of course. If you don't know the difference, I will quickly describe both of them to you. Color correction is for making colors look realistic, like taking footage that has a tint on it, or maybe some white balance issues, and making it look realistic colors as it should have looked that day. Color grading is a technique, an artistic technique used to make colors look more as like a theme or aesthetic, more an artistic style, not exactly how they would look in real life. A lot of movies do this, like Marvel. They have a lot of oranges and blues and strong colors, where horror movies have like very dark colors, maybe greens and scary looking colors like that. You can check out my last tutorial, actually, my Lightroom tutorial for portrait photography. That is more of a color grading because I'm messing with the colors and kind of making it into its own aesthetic as opposed to what it really looks like in real life. So go ahead and check out that video if you'd like. Otherwise, this is going to be about color correction and realistic colors. So let's get into it. Okay, so here we are in Premiere Pro. We have our footage loaded up and ready to go, and we're gonna wanna have our Lumetri, which one is it? I don't know. Lumetri Scopes on the left and Lumetri Color on the right. I just said both in that sentence, that was weird. And then what we're gonna wanna do is just observe our Lumetri Scopes, first of all. So what our Lumetri Scopes is telling us is the light amount coming from the footage. And I'm just gonna go ahead and play this footage so that you can see what I'm talking about as this waveform is changing. You can kind of even see what waveform is what part of the footage as it's moving. I'll play it one more time so you can see. So that is obviously the smoke, and this is the first person moving around, and this is the other person moving around right here. So we can that kind of gives you an idea of what this is telling you, right? Kind of gives you a better idea. So I'm gonna go back kind of to where my frame was so we can color correct. So this 100 right here is telling us that we are peaking out at white because 100 represents the white, the pure white in the photo. So if we are peaking out at white, that must mean that it's talking about this lamp right here that is just absolutely blown out in the shot. And we also have another peak right there. That must be this light that is absolutely blown out in the shot as well. And what this also tells us is that 0, which is true black, is not in this footage. We have no shade in this footage that is true black, at least not in this frame right here. And what we want to do is create a healthy waveform within this footage. And we can do that very easily by just doing a very few steps right now. So what we want to do first of all is we need a true black tone in this footage to make a healthy waveform. So what we're going to do is go to our blacks right here and just mess with it to see how it changes the waveform. So you can see how it's changing the footage itself and the waveform right here. It's only messing with the bottom part because it's only messing with the blacks or the dark tones in this footage. So we can see how it's changing, and we want to have some tones of true black. So we want to have the waveform just barely touching the 0 to make sure that we have a healthy balance of black. I would say that looks pretty good. Maybe it's a little too much. Oh yeah, it is too much. See, we want to be like right there, and we have our waveform just barely touching, but it's good because it means we have a true tone of black in here. And you can kind of see that it is already starting to make this footage look better and more realistic. And so then the very next thing we're gonna do is mess with our whites in the photo, the footage, because they are so blown out. It needs a little help, right? So clearly what we're gonna wanna do is go down with the whites, bring the whites down, not up, because if we bring it up, we're just peaking even more. See how bad that looks? So we wanna bring the whites down so that it just is barely touching the very top there. But as you can see in the footage, it's still kind of blown out, but that's okay because it's not completely peaking and completely overexposed as it would be if it was completely touching that 100 line. So the very next thing you're gonna wanna do is come back to your waveform, and we're gonna wanna make it even healthier. And how we do that is we're gonna want to stretch out our waveform as much as we can, because the more stretched out it is, the more dynamic visual light variety there is, and the better it's gonna look. We don't want our waveform to be squashed and tight because the colors are gonna look blocky and not well put together. So to make our waveform stretched out even more, we're gonna want to mess with our shadows. And you can start anywhere, highlights or shadows, but I'm gonna start with my shadows. And I'm just gonna move this up and down so you can see what it's doing to the waveform and to the footage. So to the footage, it's compressing the colors more. If I go down this way, as you can see, they're very flat and blocky, and the waveform looks very compressed and tight. That's not good, we don't want that. So we're gonna wanna go the other way. So if this was our starting point, we're gonna want to just go a little up. That might even be a little too much, but it's looking pretty good to me. Nice, looking good. Okay, so very next thing we're gonna do is mess with our highlights to stretch out that waveform even more. So when we go down, you can see how it's compressing the waveform, making the colors look blocky and more squashed. So we're gonna wanna bring this one up too. And that's not always the case. You're gonna have footage where you're going to need to bring down the highlights, bring down the shadows. It just depends on the footage and the color of the footage that you're working with. But in this particular case, we need to bring it up to make the waveform stretch. And sometimes I like to mess with contrast just to see, yeah, it's not doing us any favors. I'm just gonna set that back to 0. And the exposure, I like to mess with that a little bit to see. So as you can see, the more we bring up the exposure, it's really dramatically stretching out that waveform, but it is a little too bright. So I'm gonna bring it back to 0 because I think our waveform is looking pretty healthy right now. So all these tips that I just showed you is the very bare minimum that you should be doing to all of your video footage, no matter what. Just slap it on to all of your footage. It'll make editing easier, and it'll make your footage look more polished and almost to completion polished. But in this footage, since we're working with such drastic colors and darkness and light, I'm gonna show you just a little tip on how to get rid of some more hues that we can't get rid of with just the basic color correction that we did. Because as you can see, we have some very bright red hues, and I do like it. I think it looks nice on the hair, but on the face it's a little intense, and on his face as well. So I'm gonna show you just a little advanced tip that you can do to get rid of that. We're gonna come into curves here and come all the way down to hue versus saturation, and we will also be using this hue versus hue right here. So first of all, in hue versus saturation, we are going to take this eyedropper, and what you do is you click on the color that you want to get rid of. So I want to get rid of this like bright red that's on their faces right here. So I just clicked right on his nose right there, and as you can see, it shows the points in which those exact hues are found. So this is super awesome and simple. All you can do is just drag down the colors. And if you see on the footage, it actually brings down the colors as well. I'll just do an undo real fast so you can see that is the hue that we are working with. It's very saturated, very deep, and then put on that hue versus saturation and it brought it away. Look at that. So I'm going to do the very same thing with hue versus hue. Click on the same area-ish, and the dots are in the same exact spot almost, so let's bring it down and see what happens. And you can see that this one is way more intense, obviously, because we had also taken off the red on the hue versus saturation, so we're gonna want to use way less of this. So let's just bring it up just a very tiny bit. And nice, look at that. It kind of brought the hue off of their skin tone to let their natural skin tone kind of come through, and now all that's left is just the backlighting of the neon light, which is very nice, I think. And skin tone is actually supposed to hit around 60 to 70 on this waveform right here. So let's see where we're at. Let's play this and see if we can see where skin tone is kind of hitting. So that's friend 2 right there. He's hitting right at 60. Friend 1 seems to be hitting 60, 70 ish. So nice. I would say we are looking pretty good. And just also remember to just use your eyes and look at the footage and not be completely paying attention to the waveform, because you could be editing sometimes and your waveform will be looking pretty good, but then you look at your footage and you're like, whoa, what did I do? So make sure you're just looking at the footage as well, monitoring the footage and making sure it looks good. And it looks pretty good to me, honestly. I honestly didn't think it was gonna look this good after all those very basic steps. But yeah, hope you guys liked what I showed you here. Thank you guys so much for tuning in today. I hope I helped you with the very daunting task of color correcting your video footage. And please remember to like, subscribe, smash that like button. And thank you to my day 1 subscribers and all my other subscribers. You guys rock.